Destiny 2 store is still open. Right now, you can spend real money on silver in a game that Bungie announced is over. That sentence is the strangest business decision of 2026, and it only makes sense once you see the number that Bungie walked away from. And I built it from every public figure that exists. The number is bigger than you think, and the reason they burned it away is even worse. There's three numbers that frame this. When Sony bought Bungie, analyst Michael Pachter pegged them at roughly $200 million a year in revenue. And since Destiny 2 was the only product they shipped, that number was Destiny 2. By late 2023, per Bloomberg, that same game was running 45% below its own revenue projections. And then on May 21st, 2026, Bungie announced no more content ever. Not a server shutdown, something financially stranger. They ended the product's future and left the cash register running. A 9-figure revenue stream in decline but alive, and the company holding it chose the funeral. This video answers why that was the rational move, because it was, and that's the disturbing part. Here's what nobody has done with this story. Sony has never disclosed Destiny 2's revenue, not once and not in any filings. So everyone covering the sunset talks about feelings, legacy, and community. Nobody priced the actual decision. So I spent this week assembling every public number that exists. The analyst estimates at acquisition, the Bloomberg layoff reporting, and the impairment disclosures. There's enough to build the model that Sony won't show you. And the model says Bungie set to fire one of the few revenue streams that it had left on purpose. I want to lay out the framework for you guys. A live service game's revenue does not die when the servers go dark. It dies the moment the company says the words, "No more content." Because every dollar a player spends in a live service game is a bet on that game's future. Season passes are prepaid future content. Cosmetics are a status in a world you expect to keep visiting. You kill the future and you kill the reason to even spend, even while the store technically stays open. Bungie just ran the cleanest experiment in the framework's history. They announced the death and kept the shop running. By the end of this video, you're going to see what that revenue stream actually becomes and the exact products Sony will harvest from the corpse. And one prediction about that open store that you can check yourself by New Year's Eve. Let's start with the only hard anchors that exist. The original Destiny did $500 million in day one sell back in 2014. The biggest new franchise launch in Activision's history. The franchise crossed $1 billion in lifetime revenue inside its first year. Destiny 2 launched September 6th of 2017, and it went free to play in 2019, and became the template the whole industry copied. Free front door, paid expansions every year, and season passes running underneath. So when Sony paid $3.6 billion in 2022, and analyst Michael Pachter pegged Bungie at roughly $200 million a year, with third-party estimators stretching the range as high as $400 million, that number was really only one game. Sony never confirmed any of it, and never had to, because Bungie shipped exactly one product. Whatever Bungie earned, Destiny 2 earned. This was a $200 million machine, give or take at the moment Sony bought it. Here's the part that's actually on the record, because it kept costing people their jobs. In October of 2023, Bloomberg reported Destiny 2 running 45% below its own revenue projections for the year after Lightfall landed badly and retention cratered. Roughly 100 people, 8% of the studio, were let go. 9 months later came a second round that took 220 more and shrank Bungie from 1,300 to about 850. Two massive layoffs in under a year, both traced to the same shortfall. The expansions meant to reverse it and only deepened it. Edge of Fate underperformed in July of 2025 per TASE's reportings. And that December, Renegades did worse still. A Star Wars crossover peaking at just 71,000 plus on Steam, 26% under an expansion that was already a franchise low. Then Sony's own accountants put it in writing. The first Bungie impairment, $204 million in November of 2025, was attributed by Sony CFO specifically to Destiny 2 falling short of what they paid for. That remains the closest thing to an official revenue figure this game has ever had, and it's a write-off. So let's model the machine in its final year. Start from the $200 million peak and apply everything on the record. The 45% miss, 2 failed expansions, and monetization soft to the end. And you get a range I'm putting on screens as estimates, not insider numbers. Bear case, it exits around $8 million a month. Base case, 10 to 12, and bull 15. Call it $100 to $150 million a year. It's declining, but it's real, and it's real enough that it was reportedly still out earning Marathon at the end. That's the stream Bungie killed on May 21st. And not because it hit zero, but because of where every dollar of it had to go. And that monthly number is what Bungie chose to set on fire, which raises the only question that matters. The one this channel exists for, numbers over vibes and no copium. Why would a company burn a 9-figure revenue stream on purpose? Because keeping it alive costs more than it brought in, and the structure is simple once you trace it. Destiny 2's revenue was declining, but still positive. So the number was never the income line, it was that every dollar of Destiny 2 content came out of the same budget that was keeping Marathon alive. And in my last video, I showed you the hostage lock, how most of Bungie's remaining developers sit on Marathon, the studio's only live game still in active development. 2 expansions a year for Destiny 2 meant 2 expansions worth of salaries not defending a $250 million bet that was bleeding out. And those expansions had stopped paying for themselves anyway. The treadmill had started spending budget just to manufacture disappointment. So Bungie ended up running the triage math. They cut the pipeline, they kept the corpse very warm, and harvested what's left. And that harvest is already what's on the shelves. Like, let's look at what shipped alongside the death notice. Permanent price cuts on every expansion, a collection bundle packaging of 9 years of content at a discount. The Eververse store is still open with silver on sale, and cosmetic refreshes marketed right up to the final update. Reporting confirmed most of the staff learned the game was ending the same day the public did, while they were still building content that's now canceled. Those 71 pages of farewell patch notes, they weren't a love letter. They were the most polished going out of business sale in live service history. One comparison makes the whole strategy naked though. When Sony delisted Destruction All-Stars 3 weeks ago, they killed its currency sales the same day. This was a complete clean slate. Destiny 2 got the opposite treatment. Future killed, but the store was still open. Sony doesn't leave the register running by accident, so read it for what it is. They priced the tail end of this and decided the tail end was worth collecting. So what does an orphaned $100 million stream become? They have 3 paths. Path 1 is the tip jar decay, and I put this at 60%. The store stays open and the shelves slowly stop changing, and silver revenue trickles towards nothing as the population ages out. No announcement is ever going to come of this, and the stream just quietly approaches zero over 2 to 3 years, while the servers, which almost cost nothing, stay lit. This is the default precisely because it requires no decision, and Sony's whole pattern this year has been to never announce anything they don't have to. Path 2, the harvest escalates 30%. The collection is the first product, and it's not the last, followed by a remaster, a console port package, or a film and a TV move on the IP. In my previous videos, I predicted Destiny's extraction products from the behavior side. Today, the same call gets a revenue engine behind it. That's somewhere between $100 and $200 million a year of demonstrated willingness to pay attached to this franchise. And publishers do not leave proven spend sitting on the table forever. Extraction products let Sony collect it without funding a future. Path 3, the resurrection, 10%. The Final Fantasy XIV option. Declining revenue plus a still engaged audience is exactly the asset that funds a rebuild. And a few weeks ago, I ran the full checklist on whether Sony could ever pull it off. The short version, 2 conditions pass, 2 fail, and nothing in today's math moves that score. The tip of the jar doesn't fund a comeback, it actually funds the wait. The question was never which path makes the most money, it's which one requires the fewest announcements. Watch which one that turns out to be. Before the predictions, I want to make the strongest case against everything that I just said, because it isn't a weak one. The argument starts off like this: the revenue was dying anyways, the 45% miss, 2 failed expansions, and monetization that was softening to the end. Bungie didn't burn a $200 million stream. They stopped pretending a $100 million stream with a negative slope was a business, and moved the people onto the project that might still have a future. That's not destruction, that's just the company being honest with themselves. And this is partially true, and here's what it misses though. Declining revenue attached to an engaged audience isn't a dying asset. It's a literal funding source, the bridge money that pays for the pivot. That's exactly how Final Fantasy XIV survived its own rebuild. The broken game stayed monetized while the replacement got built underneath it. Bungie had that same bridge and blew it up in the same year Marathon needed funding most. Zero revenue with an orphanated audience isn't honesty. It's the next installment of the write-down paid in advance. The kill only counts as rational if Marathon makes it, and the free week numbers from June 11th already told you how that's going. I have 3 predictions and the clock starts today. 1 is the frozen shelf. The Eververse store stays open but its refresh cadence dies. Bungie's marketing cosmetic drops right up to the final update, so I'm calling the last meaningful Eververse refresh before December 31st, 2026. After that, the store is a vending machine in an abandoned mall, so it's open stocked, but it's never going to get restocked again. And you can check this yourself from inside the game. 2 is the quiet burial. Destiny 2 is never named as a revenue contributor in any of Sony's earnings material. Watch the August call. The franchise that anchored a $3.6 billion acquisition will simply stop existing in the language, because when a company stops measuring something in public, the silence is the message. And then 3 is the conversions. It's the demand model, the accounting model, and the portfolio model in my previous videos. Extraction products before any future, marathon resolved by 2027, and nothing new greenlit until the absorption completes. So we have 4 roads in one date, and that stopped being a take videos ago. Destiny 2 isn't dead, it's something more stranger. The servers are paid for and the store is open and the future is canceled. Bungie built a machine that turned belief into revenue for 9 years, and on May of 21st, they told the believers to stop believing, but kept the register running. And it was free to keep, but it was worthless to own, and still tonight, taking your money. If that store outlives my December prediction, you know where to find me.